To the NFL Week 9 betting preview. My name is Reese from InvestorBet. And in this video, I'm going to go through the upcoming 14 games now remaining for Week 9 of the NFL season. We've already had the Friday game between the Texans and New York Jets. We hit the Jets in that game to bring our record over the past 4.5 weeks on the NFL to 35-13. You can see all the plays here over that period of time to go through. These are all posted in the NFL Bet Finders. I'll put the link in the description for those. This is where I share everything I'm doing to make money betting on the NFL each week, everything I'm betting, and also all the statistics I'm using to make these decisions. So if you want to check that out, you want to make money betting on the NFL, whether you're betting on teams and sides, totals, or player props, we have all the tools to make your research process really, really easy and make sure that you're making really, really smart bets. First game, we're going to look at Dallas at Atlanta. For this matchup, Atlanta are currently 3-point favorites. Dallas were originally a 1-point favorite, so the line has shifted the other way around, and the total has moved up from 49.5 up to 52 for this game. Both these sides are really poor defensively. We have a quick look at the defensive numbers. Dallas, one of the worst defensive sides across the board. Ranked 31st in the league in points conceded. And then the Atlanta Falcons, not that much better, but slightly better. Still in the bottom half of the league in a number of categories, particularly opponent third down conversion rate. So if Dallas are able to capitalize on that, which they are pretty good at doing, go at 40% on third downs, converting that into a first down, ranked 10th overall in the league. That'll definitely be key for them. Atlanta have scored 26 or more points in 4 of their past 5 games. As I said, Dallas concede the second most points per game in the whole NFL. So I do expect this to be a high-scoring game in Atlanta. Dallas, for them, they can't run the ball. If you look at their rushing numbers, bottom 4, bottom 5 in almost every metric you look at in terms of rushing statistics. So they're definitely going to have to rely on throwing the ball. And Atlanta do concede the highest completion rate for opponent passings. So that means Dak Prescott should be able to complete plenty of passes, so potentially look at his completion numbers as well. For Atlanta, I think they should be able to run the ball pretty easily here. Dallas have a pretty poor rush defense. If you look at their numbers down here, yards per attempt, this is the key metric that you want to look at. Don't really need to pay too much attention to the overall rushing yards and opponent rushing yard attempts, but definitely the yards per attempt. That's the key metric, because sometimes what happens is if a team is, out to a big lead, then they'll run the ball a lot more, which, can definitely deflate those overall numbers of what they're conceding on the ground. But yeah, ranked 25th in the league there. And Atlanta also, they should be fine running the ball, but they also should be fine passing it. Dallas give up the most yards gained per pass attempt and also per completion. So there for the Falcons, passing, throwing, high scoring, expecting a bit of a shootout in this game. And that's how I'm approaching it from a betting perspective. Dallas have come into this. They have a 3-4 overall record. They've dropped their past 2 games against Detroit and San Francisco, so definitely in need of a win. And then the Falcons have won 4 of their past 5. The only loss at home against the Seattle Seahawks. Next game, we'll look at Miami at Buffalo. We got a divisional game. These sides met back in week 2. That was the game where Tua was injured against Buffalo. Buffalo ran out winners of that game, 31 points to 10. I'm just going to quickly bring up the odds for this matchup. Currently, Buffalo are minus 6.5 point favorite. The line originally was -3, so moved out a fair bit. The total is 49, up to 49.5 points. Tua returned last week, and Miami lost to Arizona by 1 point. Now, overall in the season, they are 2-5 overall. So another side in desperate need of a win. It's pretty tough here going on the road into Buffalo. Buffalo won their past 3 games there, 6-2 overall on the season. They've won their last 2 games by 21 or more points. And also with Buffalo, 4 of their past 5 games have been on the road. So we only had the 1 home game, which was against Tennessee in week 7. And prior to that, hadn't played at home since against Jacksonville way back in week 3. So it's a good spot here for Buffalo. Expect they should be winning They're the more complete side. Miami are pretty good defensively. But Buffalo have a very good offense and a good enough defense to limit this Miami offense. Miami's offense numbers are definitely skewed of playing a fair chunk of the season without their number one QB. And so their numbers definitely are better than what their averages do suggest. So you got to kind of separate that. But Tua has definitely struggled playing in Buffalo historically, and I do think it's tricky situation for them there. So definitely like Buffalo to be winning that game. New Orleans at Carolina. This is a not that exciting game, and definitely not one I'm really keen to get involved in from a sides perspective. Both these sides going terrible. New Orleans have lost 6 in a row. Carolina have lost 5 in a row. It's a divisional matchup. So lots of things you need to weigh up going into this matchup. Originally, New Orleans were a 1 point favorites out to -7.5. That coincides with the expected return of Derek Carr at quarterback for the Saints. And the total has stayed at 43.5 points. As I mentioned, with these sides and how they're on losing streaks of 6 and 5 games, neither of them have been competitive in those games either. Majority of those matches have been blowouts. Last time New Orleans kept it close was against Atlanta in week 4. So their past 4 games have all been 13 plus point margins. And then Carolina, their closest games over the past 5 have been 14-point margins against Cincinnati and Denver, which was last week. Carolina do get back at home here off back-to-back weeks on the road. But with Carr returning, it should be enough for New Orleans to be winning this game, and should be enough to get that offense going. Carolina rely heavily on running the ball, so Hubbard with the rushing attack against this New Orleans rush defense. Let's scroll down slightly here. Give up the 3rd most rushing yards per attempt. I think he can have a big game here. Even like the only concern is obviously if the Saints get out to a big lead, but he is still a significant part of Carolina's attack. And, unless it's, we get a kickoff return for a touchdown and, a couple of big plays early and suddenly it's like a 20-point margin, that would be the only reason I see him not having a big game. I think Carr should be able to pass his way through this Carolina defense, assuming he's good to go. And then Alvin Kamara, who's playing in really, really good form at the moment. And especially with Carr back quarterback, that opens up the running game overall this season. Across the 8 different games, he's had a total of 505 rushing yards at averaging 63 per game. Just the one kind of bad game and a little bit of a weak patch here between week 5 and week 7. During that time, New Orleans played Kansas City, Tampa Bay, and Denver, and all 3 of those games were well and truly. Let's check the Kansas City game. Kansas City were leading by 9 at halftime in that game. So for the whole of those 3 games, New Orleans were playing from behind, so you can definitely forgive those. So definitely an interesting matchup. Definitely one I feel like you're better off playing from a player prop perspective as opposed to a sides perspective. For the next game, here we go. Las Vegas at Cincinnati. Cincinnati are currently 7.5-point favorites for this game. Total open at -7. It's actually just moved back down to -7. So there's been a half-point movement just as I refreshed that. 44.5 up to 45.5. A lot of the totals have been moving up as we've seen so far this week compared to what they opened at. That generally isn't usually the case in the NFL. Bengals are the better side here and do need to win. They dropped the game last week against Philadelphia 37-17. They now sit with a 3-5 record. So very, very important. They pick up this game at home against Las Vegas. I don't feel like there's a great deal of value in them in that $1.27 hit on the head-to-head. And also I don't really want to lay like a touchdown -7, 7.5 for this Bengals side. They do have injuries. Zach Moss, the running back, is doubtful to play. T. Higgins is also doubtful for the Bengals as one of their main receivers. Bengals are a huge pass-heavy offense. we look through the number of attempts they have, so pass attempts per game, ranked 12th in the league, where rush attempts ranked 29th in the league overall. So there is that heavy emphasis on throwing the ball. With Higgins doubtful, and I don't think he has practiced this week when I was looking at this matchup, so he's definitely unlikely to play. That really opens up the game for Jamar Chase as the main receiver, especially against this Las Vegas pass defense. They don't really give up huge plays, but they definitely give up a high number of completions. And I think and against this Bengals passing offense should set it up really well. I think Cincinnati should be able to run the ball okay, but without their running back, they're definitely going to have to rely on the pass. I feel like Chase is the key player that you want to target here. And then also for Las Vegas, Brock Bowers, we've made a lot of money on backing him overall this season as the tight end for the Raiders, and I think this is another good situation for him. I'll just quickly scroll down. You'll notice here, Cincinnati are one of the worst defenses against opponent tight ends. Not only ranked 25th in yards per game, also ranked 22nd in yards per reception to tight ends. So I think Bowers can have a big game and continue his form. We look at his overall numbers on the season. Only one game where he's had under 41 yards, which was week 4. In week 4, that was when Las Vegas played Cleveland, and they won that game 20 points to 16. What we can do here is using the defensive rankings, we can have a look and see how Cleveland perform against tight ends. These are some of the tools that you can use. So Cleveland ranked 9th in the league. So they're a pretty good, top 10 defense against tight ends, and also yards per reception. They do give up a high number of yards per reception, but then obviously ranked 11th in targets per game. So they do limit the number of targets and receptions to generate this number, because that's going to break down to about only 4 receptions per game, which Bowers generally gets more than that. So I feel like he's a good play there in the Vegas Bengals game. The LA Chargers at Cleveland. Cleveland broke through for a win last week, beating Baltimore, which a lot of people potentially didn't expect there. Cleveland definitely turned their form around. Coming into that game, the Browns had lost 5 straight matches. They've had back-to-back weeks at home. This is now their 3rd consecutive home game. So from that perspective, it is a good situation for them. They're originally 4-point favorites. The Chargers are now a 1-point favorite. LA come into this game winning 2 of their past 3, but they have lost 3 of their past 5 games. Currently sitting at 4-3 overall on the season. For the Chargers, they are playing better, I would say, particularly on their defense. If we look through their defensive numbers, you see ranked number 1 in points conceded, conceding only 13 points a game. And against this Cleveland side, who ranked 27th in points scored, it's going to be interesting whether Cleveland can find enough points to win this game. They are, if they do score, 20, 22 points in that range, then they probably will win. But is that going to be possible? Or last week when they played Baltimore, was that, a bit of a fluke? They ended up scoring 29 points in that game, but did only have 6 at halftime. So 23 of their 29 points came in the second half to run over the top of Baltimore in that game. The advantage for them is obviously they're at home again, so not having to travel definitely is a big, big advantage. For the Chargers, I feel like they're the more likely winner in this game, but with the current odds of LA $1.87 to Cleveland $1.97, don't think there's a great deal of value, and I feel like the market is pretty spot on. So at this stage, I haven't decided if I'm going to bet in this game. I'm probably going to take a head-to-head bet if I do play, but currently am still undecided. But lean towards the Chargers. Statistics tell you the Chargers, they're the better defensive side, and in close games, that can be, enough to get you over the line. Then I will quickly look at the Indianapolis, Minnesota game. This is the primetime game on Monday. Currently, Minnesota is a 5.5-point favorite, and they do need to bounce back. They started the season 5-0. They've dropped their past 2 games, so definitely in need to turn that form around. The last 2 games they've dropped have been against Detroit and the LA Rams. and did concede 61 points across those two games. So for a side that, is pretty good defensively, aside from the amount of penalty yards they give up, most of their numbers are pretty good. You can ignore pass attempts and completions as teams throw the ball to try and keep up with them. They stop the run. They're number one side at generating pressure on the opponent quarterback. Joe Flacco is starting for Indianapolis, which I think is a positive because the Vikings are the best team at stopping the quarterback rush, which means that this is the main strength of Richardson, who is generally the first quarterback for the Colts. And so Minnesota would instantly take that away for the most part. Obviously, wouldn't completely stop it and make it exempt, but it definitely limits it. Minnesota this game was originally a pick 'em and it's moved out to 5.5. The total's 47.5 down to 46.5. For this matchup, I definitely think Minnesota get over the line at home. What we've seen of them this season, you can definitely forgive the win against Detroit, where they lost by 2 points at home, and then on the road against the Rams. This was the Thursday or Friday game last week, and for that matchup, there was a lot of controversy about decisions and calls. A lot of calls went against Minnesota in that game, and a lot of there was plenty of stuff on social media, people having opinion on what the outcome of that game was. Anyway, Minnesota definitely off that extended rest are well suited coming into this matchup. The Colts coming off a loss last week against Houston, losing by 3 points. This will be the Colts' fourth of their last 5 games being played on the road. It's definitely not an ideal situation for them either coming into this. For the Colts, they do have Jonathan Taylor at running back. He is one of the better running backs in the NFL. If we bring up his numbers, they are pretty good. Way too far down. Jonathan Taylor, missed weeks 5 to 7, came back last week with 105 yards. He's had 88 or more in 4 of his 5 starts overall this season. If he can get his running game going, that definitely helps Indianapolis. It takes that bit of pressure off Joe Flacco. I think he may struggle a little bit. He's going to need to throw the ball to win this game, but with the pressure Minnesota bring, is he going to be able to evade that pressure? I think he may cop quite a number of sacks in this game. I'd be slightly nervous taking his passing yards over. I think Josh Downs could have a big game for the Colts as the main receiver that Flacco could target. He's coming off a 109-yard game. Last week, he's had 66 plus in 4 of his past 5 games, and he was the go-to guy last week. So it'll be interesting if they keep that up again going into this game against Minnesota. Minnesota, I think it's wide receivers. They don't defend that well, as you can see here. This is the key area that you can target. Can't really run the ball that well against them, but you definitely can throw the ball to those receivers. So I think that's going to be the play there for the Colts. But overall, I think Minnesota get the job done. Then we have Washington at New York Giants, a divisional game in the NFC East. These sides met back in week 2. Washington won that game 21 points to 18. There was no touchdown scored in that game either. So just a barrage of field goals. I think from memory, every drive ended in a field goal. So every drive was a scoring drive. Just teams couldn't convert in the red zone, which is, a little bit of a problem for both of these sides. Their red zone touchdown percentage ranked 24th in the league and 32nd in the league for the New York Giants. So that is a major problem, makes it very, very hard to win games. The Giants were originally a 1-point favorite for this game. Washington is now -3.5. This was largely due to the question marks on Jaden Daniels. He is expected to play as I currently look at it. The total has moved up with that same news, 41.5 up to 44.5. Washington's numbers are clearly better on both sides of the ball here. They're the better offensive side and also the better defensive side in the majority of categories. So I do expect them to win this game. Their only loss in their past 7 games for Washington was against Baltimore, where they lost on the road by 7 points. They have played 3 of their past 4 at home, go on the road here. So that's just that little bit of a test. The Giants are coming back off losing against Pittsburgh. They're on a shorter week. playing the primetime game at the end of last week. So Washington do have that extended rest. If Jaden Daniels plays, I think Washington win. They can. The key here with Washington is running the ball. New York are one of the worst rush defense, ranked 32nd in yards per attempt, and Washington, one of the best rushing teams in the NFL. Both Daniels and Brian Robinson can run the ball successfully over the past 2 games. They both had 50 plus rushing yards on the ground. And I think they're going to implement that same tactic. No need to air the ball out when, teams can't defend the run, but that then does open up the passing game as well. New York yet to win at home as well this season. They've had 4 games, losses against Minnesota, Dallas, Cincinnati, and Philadelphia. Across those 4 games, New York have only totaled, quickly adding it up, 31. I think it's 31 total points. So we got 16, 16 plus 15, 31 total points across 4 games. They're only averaging about 8 points a game, just under, across 4 games at home this season. And against a Washington side that is definitely a high-powered offensive side. They're ranked, let's see the number 3 in the league, averaging just under 30 points a game. New York's definitely going to have to find points to keep themselves in this game. So I think Washington get the job done and take out that game in the NFC East there. New England at Tennessee. No real interest at all for me in this game. We have New England, who broke 6-game losing streak last week with their win. I'm just going to bring up the overall records. With that win against the New York Jets. Prior to that, they hadn't won since week 1. And then the Tennessee Titans have only won 1 of their 7 games so far this season. They've been outscored 24-86 across their last 2 games against Detroit and Buffalo. Both of those were on the road. They come back home here, so they're suited from that perspective. And this is definitely a lot easier matchup than playing Detroit and Buffalo, which means you definitely have to factor that in. You can't just look at their last 2 games and be like, well, they've been hammered. They conceded 52 last week against Detroit. There's no way they could win this game. The difference in composition and opponent is very, very massive. So I feel like they're deserving to be favored, but when it comes to putting money down on a game, it's definitely not one I care to get involved with. Tennessee were -3.5, it's down to -3. The total's 42.5 down to 38.5. So movement towards being a closer game and low scoring on both lines, but definitely staying out. There's also a lot of injuries for both sides and question marks on starters. So many question marks. There's a lot better games to bet into. And, when we bet, we don't need to bet into every game. We can pick and choose the spots where we want to bet and take advantage of it from that perspective. Then we have the Denver Broncos at Baltimore. This is a pretty good game. You got top offense going in against a top defense, and then an offense that has kind of struggled going against a really poor offense. I'm just bringing up the game here for this one. And currently, I cannot find my notes on it. Oh, there we go. Here it is. Okay, so for this matchup, the line stayed at -9.5 on Baltimore at home here. The total's 45.5 up to 46.5. For both these sides, they're both 5-3 overall on the season. So pretty important game for both sides as to who gets the win here. Denver coming to this matchup, winning 5 of their past 6 after they dropped the opening 2 games of the season. Their only loss during that time was against the Chargers. And then for Baltimore, they had won 5 in a row before losing last week against Cleveland, which we mentioned earlier. Baltimore are back at home. They played 3 of their past 4 on the road. At home this season, they've won 2 of their 3 games, beating Buffalo and Washington and losing against Las Vegas by 3 points. Denver are 3-1 on the road this season. So both sides, good, solid records, building into their seasons nicely. Feel like Baltimore probably win this game at home. And in a way, I kind of feel like they're in that same boat as Cincinnati where they probably should win. I'd say Baltimore is probably the more likely of the two to actually win. But I don't think there's a great deal of value in them. This is another game where I prefer to focus on the prop markets. Expect Baltimore to just focus on the running game here. For Denver, they're a really, really good pass defense. They give up the least number of yards per attempt and per completion. and completion percentage is only mid-range as well. Fourth least number of passing yards, and they are very good at generating pressure. That likely flushes out Lamar Jackson, makes him go on the run, and the Broncos are still a pretty good run defense, but just not at the same level as they are a pass defense. So far this season, we know that Baltimore have one of the best rushing attacks in the league with Derrick Henry at running back and then Lamar Jackson, who can also run the ball. Expect this is where their key focus is going to be this week. So both of those players to have big games. From a Denver perspective, Bo Nix had his biggest passing game of his career last week in the Broncos win against Carolina, where they won 28-14. He had 284 yards. He's going to have to throw the ball quite a lot this week to keep Denver in the game, and especially if they are trailing, then that sets this up even nicer. I expect he does have a big game. Baltimore, if not the worst, they're very close to it, pass defense in the league, so he should have a pretty easy time of it. He was able to get the confidence up last week against Carolina and bring that to this game this week. Only difference is this time he's on the road compared to playing at home, which is easier last week. But I think he can definitely have a big game, and definitely another aspect that I'll be looking at playing that Denver-Baltimore matchup. Chicago at Arizona. This is an interesting game. This is, two sides who are a bit inconsistent, which makes it tricky from a betting perspective. The line's fully switched around here. Chicago were 1.5 point favorites. Now Arizona are 2 point favorites. Totals 47.5 down to 44. Feel like for this matchup, my only current thoughts on it as I look at it is that the Chicago Bears should be able to get their offense going against this Arizona defense. Their numbers are pretty poor. They struggle to stop the pass and also stop the run. Expect DeAndre Swift to have a big game. Caleb Williams doesn't play well on the road, so I think the Chicago offense coordinator is going to look more to the running game and really try and build off of that. And against Arizona, they should be able to do that successfully. I don't think there's a great deal between these two sides. If it is a close game, there should be plenty of running the ball involved as well. From an Arizona perspective, I don't have a great deal of opinion of any areas we could potentially target. Chicago are pretty good defense. Expect probably Arizona can make some yards on the ground as their preferred form of attack. James Conner, is a little bit inconsistent, but is capable of having big games. Overall, this season, he's averaging 69.6 yards per game. So going pretty well. And I think that'll be most likely the area of target there for Arizona. Oh, there was one more game that I just missed that we'll come back to. It's probably one of the more exciting games. Detroit at Green Bay. There's question marks on Jordan Love, but as I currently last looked, he is expected to play. Detroit's currently a 2.5 point favorite. It's moved down from -3 with Jordan Love expected to play. Total 48 down to 47.5, so only a half-point movement. As I said, this is probably one of the most exciting games of the week. Both high-powered offensive sides. Detroit averaging 33.4 points a game. They've averaged 43 across their past 4 games. So absolutely flying on offense. And the thing about Detroit is they don't just, get a 10, 14 point lead and then start playing clock management and trying to, grind out a win by, 7 points or something. They get to a 14 point lead and then they go another touchdown, and just keep the foot to the floor. And that sets itself up well for overs. And against those sides they played Seattle, Dallas, Minnesota, and Tennessee during that period. Dallas, Seattle, not really. They're poor defenses. Minnesota's pretty good, especially at stopping the run, but they weren't able to do that against Detroit. And then Tennessee, numbers-wise, are pretty good, but I think their numbers are inflated based on the opposition that they face. But really can't take anything away. The only thing with Detroit is they are playing in an outdoor stadium here, which isn't as ideal for their passing game. So I think they turn to the running game a little bit more. And if there's a lot of running going on, it can be tricky to generate a high scoring game unless it's just absolutely unstoppable running, which Jamal Gibbs and Dave Montgomery kind of have that combination, which does cause that. And I think they are going to have a big game here against Green Bay. Expect plenty of points, especially if Jordan Love does play. Green Bay have scored 24 plus in each of the last 6 games. So both sides capable of scoring. Neither defense is like an absolute like unstoppable, like, or they're a stoppable defense, I should say, but neither defense is like one where you could really bank on you winning the game based off their defense. If these teams keep on converting their first downs, then I think it sets it up really, really well. Both sides also very good at causing turnovers, so if they can generate that in good field position. Just check their Green Bay ranked 23rd in the league for turnovers. Detroit don't turn the ball over anywhere near as much, but definitely like that to be a high scoring game. Then we have the LA Rams at Seattle. Interesting game as well, this one. Divisional matchup between these two sides. The Rams coming off a win versus Minnesota. They got their key receivers back in Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. There were quite like there was a bit of secrecy going around with those players returning in that Minnesota game last week, which I think there was that bit of controversy around. And they got the win 30 points to 20. They put together back-to-back wins now, so won both games since their bye. They went into the bye 1-4, so they come out of it looking a lot better, and they're definitely going to perform better, with those key receivers in the side. Seattle, on the other hand, have lost 4 of their past 5 games now after starting the season 3-0. But when you look through now who they beat during those 3 games, Denver, that was a good win in week 1 at home, and then they lost to the Patriots and the Dolphins, who, were undermanned in that matchup. So, is this Seattle team, are they more of a 2 and how many games they played, 2-6 side or a 1-7 side, more so than a 4-4 side, is how I'm kind of looking at it. I feel like they're probably more leaning towards that 2-6, at best 3-5 overall this season. They are at home here on back-to-back home games, playing Buffalo last week without blowing out 31 points to 10. Do expect this to be a game with plenty of points involved. Both these sides are really poor defensively. From a points conceded perspective, both ranked around 20 overall in the league. Both give up in the bottom 10 or 11 in the league in number of yards and also yards per play, both ranked poorly. I think there's going to be, expect plenty of points. Rams are probably the better side and should be winning this game. I probably don't really care too much to get involved from a side perspective. There's not a great deal between them. Lines move from -1.5 on the Rams to -2. Totals 45.5 up to 48. But definitely prefer the total in this game. And we could go through the player props and find some good targets as well. Whenever there's an expected high scoring game, you can definitely find some good prop numbers because all those other metrics all go up alongside it. Then we have Jacksonville at Philadelphia. Philadelphia, went into the bye with a pretty average record, and there were question marks on them. How are they going this season? Their record going into the bye was 2-2, dropping games against Tampa and Atlanta. But out of the bye, they've gone 3-0, beating Cleveland, Giants, and Bengals. They've played 4 of their past 5 games on the road. So back home here, this is not a good spot for Jacksonville. Philadelphia, in their current form, should get the job done. They should be winning at home. Jacksonville, overall 2-6 on the season. They lost their first 4 and have won 2 of their past 4 games now. Could say they're turning it around a little bit, but I do still think they have quite a ways to go to, really be a competitive side in this league. Just going to bring up the odds movement for this game, if I can find it. There it is. So currently Philadelphia are -7.5. The total, the line was originally -4, so it's moved up 3 points, and the total is 47.5 down to 46. As I said, expect Philly to win this game. Saquon Barkley should have a huge game on the ground. Jacksonville's run defense is really, really poor. So is their pass defense, but I think that Philadelphia have a bigger focus on running the ball here and just building their offense around Barkley. I think AJ Brown could have a big game as well. As I mentioned, like Jacksonville's pass defense isn't great either. AJ Brown has had 116, 89, and 84 yards receiving across his past 3 games, missed weeks 2 to 4, and had 119 back in week 1. So he's averaging 102 yards per game receiving this season and gets a really good matchup here against Jacksonville. So I think he'll have a big game. Only concern is obviously, if Philadelphia get out to a big lead, that brings the running game to the forefront. But I think, playing his number as opposed to Jalen Hurts' overall passing numbers is definitely, the better way of approaching it. And then final game we have on Tuesday. This is Tampa Bay at Kansas City. The Chiefs are 7-0 so far this season. Tampa have now lost 3 of their past 4 games. Their only win that they had was against New Orleans, who were playing without Derek Carr. So you can't really write too much home about that performance. And I think they had a number of special teams touchdowns in that game to get to that 51-point score. For Tampa, their defense is a major problem. They've conceded 27 or more points in their past 4 games. And when you look at who they've played, Atlanta twice, who, are a good offensive side, but not amazing. They're not the number 1 offensive side, put it that way. Then against Baltimore, they conceded 41. And against New Orleans, who, without their starting quarterback, still conceded 27 points. Kansas City should win this game, find plenty of points. Their offense should get rolling. The offenses has been a bit of the problem for Kansas City, and it kind of sounds funny saying that with Mahomes leading, but they do have injuries. Rashee Rice is out. There are a number of other players as well. Pacheco, running back, also out. No, I think there's one other player off the top of my head. I can't remember. But regardless, they still get the job done, still find the way to win matches. They have another side similar to Philadelphia. They've played 4 of their past 5 games on the road. Back at home here, should be a very, very comfortable win against Tampa Bay. And with Kansas City's defense, they should be able to keep this Tampa offense in check. Their numbers are very, very solid, both defending the pass and defending the run. And that doesn't leave many opportunities for Tampa. And, Tampa's numbers on offense are really good, but they're not going to find enough points to be able to win this game on the road when the defense can't generate stops. Chiefs will just manage the clock. They're the best team at doing that. Kareem Hunt will have a big game at running back, should get plenty of carries, and see them having plenty of success running the ball here against this Tampa rush defense that concede the 3rd most yards per attempt in the league. So that's likely how I'm rounding out week 9 of the NFL. This brings us to the end of this week. We're halfway through the season. As I mentioned, we've now won 35 of our last 48 bets on the NFL. Pretty much all those bets are, I think it's an average price around $1.75, $1.80. So very much so in the profit. Post all those bets in the NFL Bet Finders. If you want to get access to them, you can do that through the description underneath this video. And get access to all these tools so you can profit betting on the NFL. The NFL is definitely not a sport where you just, pick the team that should win and just back them or lay big points. It's not the way about going about it. When I first started betting on the NFL, I approached it that way. I was just like, oh, well, this is a way better side. I'm going to take them -10 and they'd win the game by 8 points or 7 points, whatever. And I had to find better ways of approaching betting on the NFL for it to be profitable. And so since about 2014, doing this full-time every season, that's how I've implemented those tactics. And that's why I built the Bet Finders at back then, customized them over the years to make the analysis not only better and more detailed and have more information, but more efficient, that when you look at the information, you're actually easily able to interpret it and be like, okay, I can see how this side, their strengths are here. This is where they have an edge against this side, both not only on the head-to-head and, breaking it down by passing, rushing, etc., both offense and defense, but also breaking down by position, by players, and by their trends and their performances. So that's how you can approach it if you want to be profitable betting on the NFL, which if you are betting, it's better to be profitable than losing money each week. Like the really cool thing about betting on the NFL is you know that every time Monday rolls around, you got this stack of games you can go through, pick out the best 7, 8, 9, 10 selections, back those, then win 6, 7, 8, 9, hopefully 10 of them, and then collect the money and then roll into next week. So you can just do that research for the 1 week, lock in the plays, and then keep on building throughout the season. So love to have you in the bet finders in there. I also help coach you through using them and make sure you're getting the most out of using these tools. And obviously you get access to everything I'm betting as well. So you not only research the games for yourself, which a lot of people do, but a lot of people also want to just follow everything I'm betting as well and make money from doing that, which comfortably covers the membership as part of the NFL Bet Finder. So with that said, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hopefully it was insightful for betting on the games coming up on Monday and also Tuesday. And good luck with your bets this weekend. Thanks guys for watching. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so I'll keep posting more videos like this, and I'll talk to you soon.